everyone, and welcome to our Lenten journey that we've entitled Put It on the Altar. We are continuing today in day 29, and we're going to Genesis chapter 22, verse 12. It says these words, "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Today, I want to talk about yesterday's obedience can be today's disobedience. Throughout Genesis chapter 22, we see the crucial significance of obeying God. I mean, if you ain't got nothing else from this pastor, you heard all throughout this time about the benefits of obeying God. And not just in terms of what God tells you to do, but how he tells us to do it and when he tells us to do it. Because obedience isn't just a suggestion, it's an essential foundation for the ongoing growth of our faith. In our lives, we must recognize that God speaks continually. It is not as though God gives us instructions once and leaves us to fend for ourselves. No, rather, we serve a God who is actively involved in our lives, constantly guiding us through his word, his spirit, and the circumstances he allows. This ongoing communication emphasizes the importance of obedience. It's not just about following instructions at a single point in time. It's about walking in the step with God as he reveals the next part of the journey. Friends, this theme is especially evident in the story of Abraham in Genesis chapter 22. Abraham's obedience to God is portrayed in a way that demonstrates not only trust, but an unwavering commitment to follow God, even when the direction seems to change. Hear me. In verses 1 through 11, follow me closely. Abraham faithfully follows God's command to sacrifice his son Isaac, believing in the promise God made to him. Yet in verse 12, God instructs Abraham to stop, offering a dramatic shift in the plan. Hear me again. 1 through 11, Abraham faithfully follows God to sacrifice his son Isaac. But in verse 12, God instructs Abraham to stop and changes the plan. This reversal of instruction might seem puzzling or like a sign of indecision on God's part. But rather than being a sign of change or indecisiveness, it's an intentional test of Abraham's obedience, his attentiveness, and his ability to follow God's will, no matter what it looks like at the moment. What we can glean from this is that obedience is not just about following a static set of instructions. It's about being responsive to God's will, even when it shifts unexpectedly. God may direct us in one season to follow a specific path, but in the next season, he might change the direction entirely. The key is to trust him enough to move with his lead, even if it seems contradictory. Abraham's willingness to obey, even when God changed his direction, demonstrates a deep trust in God's greater plan and a willingness to follow whenever God leads, even when it doesn't make sense at first. Friends, we approach the end of Lent. It's just important for us to reflect on how God may have called us to certain actions or changes in this season. And just because God's instruction for this time in our lives may not be the same in the next season doesn't mean we've done anything wrong. Instead, it's a testament to God's sovereignty and faithfulness. Perhaps God calls you to one thing, but later he leads you to something completely different. Maybe God places you in a relationship that isn't intended to last forever, or he leads you down a career path that doesn't fit the original vision you had. These changes don't necessarily indicate failure or confusion. They are part of God's redemptive plan to grow and refine us. Our obedience in one season may be preparing us for something entirely different in the next season. The question remains, though, can we trust God enough to move with him even when things seem to change up on you? God's plan and instructions aren't always linear, friends, but they are always purposeful. Even when it seems like we've invested time and effort into something that doesn't turn out the way we expected, we can trust that God is using it to shape us. He is never wasteful with our time or efforts. Instead, he builds us in ways we cannot always see, making us better prepared for what lies ahead. I'm done, but we're reminded in this passage that God gives us daily bread. Somebody ought to say daily bread. That's sufficient guidance for today. If we delay obedience or try to carry out God's commands when we want to or when it feels more convenient, we risk missing his will on our lives. Today's obedience is essential for tomorrow's faithfulness. Let me say that one more time. I said today's obedience is essential for tomorrow's faithfulness. We are called not to follow God occasionally, but daily. To truly follow his will, we must be vigilant in listening to him every day, not just when it's easy or when we feel inspired, but consistently, even when it seems like the path is uncertain. It's in that daily attentiveness and trust that we can walk in true obedience and align ourselves with God's perfect will for our lives. Friends, family, keep joining us every single day, Monday through Saturday, on this Lenten journey together. I pray it's becoming formative for you as we draw towards the end of this time, as we look at Abraham's story and see how God is calling us to put our all on God's altar. We'll see you tomorrow.